What a lovely present.
Yeah, right.
You're an adult now. You can go to war.
And, but I'd had a letter from the Navy saying that I'd been accepted in the class of January 1953. And I got my greetings from Uncle Sam in November of 1952 saying report for your draft physical, and I did that but took the letter with me that I had.
What was the class? What? I don't understand what you said about the class.
Well, my OCS class I was referring to. I mean, I'd been accepted in
into
OCS class,
training.
candidate school. And so when I got called up for my draft physical, I said, came down to the Long Meadow and said, I've got a letter saying I'm going in January '53 in the Navy. Will that do? And they said, we'll take the physical, but the answer is yes.
So the draft board in Long Meadow was like selectmen, or it was citizens, right?
It was. It may not have been Long Meadow. It may have been because the attorney that I dealt with was a Springfield attorney.
Oh.
So it was the Springfield draft board, but and they took so many in each group out of the surrounding towns at that point, and it was by the population numbers basically.
All right.
And,
okay, so you went to officer candidate school, and then you were a communications officer.
You know, I was communications officer and combat information center officer eventually, and operations officer, which is the department head eventually. And
did you ever get sent overseas?
I made a trip to South America within a month of the time that I reported on board the ship in May of '53 on a midshipman cruise. And in '54 to early '55 made a cruise around the world, which wasn't bad.
No.
And it was the last Korean fleet augmentation by the East Coast destroyers. I was on a destroyer. And came back and stayed in the reserve program locally until I retired 24 years later.
Wow.
So I put 27 years in the military, so.
My goodness.
Came out a commander.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for your service.
Gee, thanks.
So anyway, you came back to
That's
Long
my
Meadow.
history now. Enough of that.
Well, it helps to understand.
And I was a geography major in Dartmouth.
Geography?
Geography, yeah.
I don't even think they have that major anymore.
They most certainly do.
They do?
It's 10 times the size of the department. It's a huge department at Dartmouth now.
Wow. I went to Brown and I took history, but it was only European history. The world was smaller then.
It was more easily understood, I think.
Yeah, especially if you put blinders on. Yeah, really narrowed it down. Anyway, so when you came back to Long Meadow, and you were now married, and you bought a...
No, I came back and then married.
Okay, and then bought a house.
But moved to West Springfield for a year and a half and said, to heck with this, and bought a house on Will Swamp Road, and lived there until our son was about 3 years old, I guess, and we got a little concerned with his riding his tricycle and bicycle whistling down our driveway on Will Swamp Road and out into the street. And even though it wasn't a through street at that point, there were enough cars.
Yeah.
We decided we got to do something, and so we bought a house around the corner on Knollwood Drive, and I'm still there.
A little more off the beaten path, yes.
You could go down the driveway and out into the street with more comfort, but.
Now, by the late 50s, Long Meadow had grown considerably and changed a lot. But you took a place that still felt rural.
Yeah. Although by the time we moved on to Knollwood Drive, many of the streets on the north side of Will Swamp Road had been built, and so it was.
And Wolf Swamp School.
was there
Was
almost before the road was built, not quite, but that was there, I think, before any houses were built.
Really?
I think so. Because it was drawing from a large area that had been built that were World War II houses. And Prinwood, Hazardville,
Right.
that part of Maple Road, and so forth, that it was that or enlarge, build another new school, which they did eventually.
Yeah, Greenwood.
Greenwood, yeah.
So when you came back, though, the building was going east, 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 and
Yeah.
the shops were being built, right?
They were there.
The high school graduated first class in '58.
Something like that. But the houses were going up and streets were going in and as fast as you could catch your breath.
Yeah.
They were opening streets and building both sides of the street at the same time.
Wow.
And it was part of the mass exodus to Long Meadow.
It was. Well, it was because
it
all
was.
that land was
Yeah,
open
it
once
was
they
opening
took
up.
away the sandhills. And,
Right.
And suddenly
Flattened it out.
the baby boomers are ready to go to school,
Yeah.
ride their trikes,
Absolutely.
and you want to
Or
be in
bikes, yeah.
So
Exactly.
people just poured in. So you felt that at the time, how fast it was growing?
Well, having been away from 48 pretty much until 57, 56,
It's almost 10 years.
yeah. And that was the mushroom time, really.
Right.
And there were a lot of, as I say, a lot of streets there were a lot of streets that the tree work had been done, but and maybe a dirt road plowed in going down Wolf Swamp Road. And there were houses built beyond where it turned to dirt already on Wolf Swamp, down as far as Oak, and beyond that, 3 or 4 houses at that point. And all of the housing in behind there was some of it was built off of Birch and those streets. And there was enough for the school to keep the school happy
Oh, yeah.
from there, and enough for the reason to build the school with what was coming, so it made good sense.
Well, the high school, the big argument was we'll never have enough students.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, they didn't have many.
No, they didn't originally.
Yeah, and who
My wife was looking to teach history at Long Meadow High School, and I'm probably telling tales out of school, but she was a literal and liberal enough teacher and be willing to teach all sides of history. This being the McCarthy era.
all sides not
The
welcome.
warning by some of the hierarchy in the high school that she knew was best you not come to Long Meadow because they're going to insist that you not teach the way you want to teach.
Right away.
Yes. Well, she was a known quantity, and
I mean, during McCarthy, we didn't even have a high school.
no, but
I guess
they
it lingered,
did,
though.
but it was the
anti-communism.
feeling. It was
It was a Cold
the
War
hierarchy.
feeling.
The hierarchy was scared or gun shy, shall we say, and it was. She was disappointed because she was looking forward to teaching in Long Meadow High School, and she'd have been a good teacher. And she eventually substituted, and was one of the asked for substitutes frequently.
Yeah.
Because she taught the lessons for the day, but maybe not exactly the way the regular teacher would have, and the kids always felt they learned more. Because she had a good way about her, and had enough stories that proved the points that she wanted to prove. And
Now, you participated some in town government, yes?
historically speaking, yes, mostly involved in history. Other than the insurance committee that the town had for a while, that worked with the town controller, or whatever Paul is now.
Oh, he was the
stair
accountant
check.
for a long
Town
time. Now he's
accountant,
finance
town
director.
accountant,
Yeah.
And
And the Historical Society.
but I was involved in the Historical
independent.
Society, which is separate. And
Did you work on getting the historic district? Were you with them then?
I was not involved in that specifically. That had been done prior to my coming on, or all of the spade work had been done. And but I was a representative when I was president of the Historical Society, which I was many years ago. I volunteered to be a member of the Historic District Commission at that point, because they try to have somebody from the Historical Society on the Historic District Commission. Doesn't always work, but and I was the Historical Society's representative on the District Commission, so I was involved in that. And I was then, after that was done, I got involved with the Historic Commission, which is handles the rest of the town.
Oh, yes.
Historical things in the rest of the town. or things that will become historical.
Right.
Historical in the rest of the town.
Well, I do think that's fine. Long Meadow is interesting because it was built in
chunks.
In chunks.
Really?
You really have neighborhoods that represent certain styles and eras.
It was a true streetcar suburb. I mean, the
The
north
street,
end of the
they
town.
called it the street.
The street, yeah. And it was originally Main Street, and then eventually became Long Meadow Street. And it was laid out from Enfield to the Pecosic.
Right. And there's spot things like Johnny Appleseed's house and stuff like that.
Very much
But
so.
mostly, I always thought we should have like a historic tour. You could say these houses were all built in the 50s and they represent, like a little bus.
And,
Or
yes, and Wooden Steel Store was a grocery store, and it was a good one.
Yes, I've been
More than the candy store, but
first
it
I
was
heard
a candy
only
store.
candy,
No.
and then I've been corrected numerous times now on that.
And Louis the Butcher was one of the nicest guys and an outstanding meat cutter. He was unbelievable.
Well, the second half hour went as rapidly as the first. Thank you so much for staying and being with us.
My pleasure,
And
really.
See you next
Fun
time.
chatting.
See you next time, viewers.